What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the Wise Take NFL DFS First Look. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. Joined once again by another GOAT, another true OG, truest of the true OGs, arguably. That's right. I say it every time because it's true. It's Patio Joe. You can find him on Twitter at Patio Joe Ref, aka 6-0 Patio Joe. How do you like that? Joey, what's happening?
Not much, man. Just enjoying the Dodgers going up 1-0. So we got 3 more wins to go, get the World Series. So I'm happy about that. It's week 7, and I'm 6-0. The cash game article is 6-0. I've never started this hot before, so I'm ecstatic. And last week, it's funny. I look at my article and I looked at where the cash game's going. Derrick Henry was only like 30% owned in cash games. And I had him as a core play. And I didn't start out as a core play, but I was in the chat on Friday night talking with Fritz and D Millie, and they were saying about how Henry's a play. And I was like, yeah, I like him. And then I started to actually, like, you know how it is, like you like plays, but then you haven't really started making lineups yet. So then you start making lineups, and then you get to the point where you're like, man, I can afford Henry in almost any build that I do, whether if I want to pay up at quarterback and get Rodgers or not, or go down with Fitzpatrick or whatever. So once I realized that, I'm like, well, then Henry's got to be my last core play. So I had him in there, and it paid off. And, obviously he had the day he had, and that was the reason why, I cashed pretty easily, and we're 6-0 on the week 7.
I'm with it, Joey. 6-0 is a beautiful thing. It is definitely a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I thought it was strange, too. Henry's ownership in tournaments was around the same, like 30%, which is just mind-boggling to me, how he wasn't. Like, one of the reasons that I didn't play Henry as heavy as I should have is because I was concerned a little bit about ownership. I was also going with a different build. I whiffed heavily on the Tampa Bay Green Bay game, so like I was just destined for failure from that perspective. But I, too, was shocked when I saw how low owned Henry actually was in cash, giving his, especially on a site like FanDuel, where Henry is almost always, like, it's always easier to fade him on DraftKings, I feel like, where, PPR is a thing and there's so many other running backs who are so much more involved in the pass game. This was, FanDuel, to me, it almost seems impossible to fade him each week because you're so touchdown dependent and there's so many other running backs who are going to get not get near the rushing attempts or volume that matters that he gets. So I was shocked. Shout out to you, though, Joey, because 6-0, like I said, 6-0 Patio Joe. There's a nice ring to it. You know what I mean? You know what sounds even better? 7-0. That's what sounds even better.
7.
That's right.
7. Let's go to the Magic 7.
That's right. That's right. Shout out to those of you watching live with us. Sorry for the late start. I see D Millie, Tony A, Paulie D all up in the chat. Paulie D leads it off right away with the LFG, the let's bleep go. And then he writes to sleep. So Paulie D joining in all the fun with the rest of the nation. Shout out to Fritz, D Millie, MD Smith, and these guys have been in the Slack chat constantly, which we've made more of an effort to make sure that we get in there and mix it up with everyone. And they've been in there just talking things up, really making this NFL season exciting. We will be announcing this week's giveaway at the end of the show, so make sure you stay tuned for that. We're also going to be doing a little Wise Take Listener League type action. I got the contest on DraftKings opened. I'll post the link in the description once the show is over. And Joey, I know you always do the Bada Bing contest too, so we can provide a link on if you play FanDuel. We'll do the Listener League on DraftKings, and then Patio Joe's contest we can set up on FanDuel. Put the link in the description as well. And let's get some merit points going. Let's see who could build the best team, man. Get an opportunity to go into Patio Joe's contest. Get an opportunity to see one of Patio Joe's teams. See one of, if you're doing it on DraftKings, you can see one of my teams. Paulie probably get down on these things too. So looking to create more engagement, looking to create more, fun. This thing that people call fun, right? That's the whole reason that people are here. So making money, having fun, that's what it's all about. And that's really what the Wise Tech Nation is about. We do, once this chat gets bumping, I do actually have we're going to pull up the chat on the screen here, try to be a little bit more engaged with those of you who are watching us live, who stay up late to watch us live. I know right now we're competing with some World Series action, so maybe not the best of times, but the biggest Dodger fan I know is right here with me. So what does that say? I think Paulie D's actually got a showdown sweat going right now.
Yeah, well, the Dodgers over. They won.
Oh, it's over.
They won 8-3. So I know I think he was in second.
Right.
Last time I checked.
Right. It was
Yeah.
like good luck $400. I mean, obviously it's not his forte. The showdowns for baseball, so I'm sure he obviously went light, but you know what it is. With that said, I also saw Fritz had a really good fucking week, man. And his cash team on FanDuel, really good fucking week. And he had a lot of your core plays in there. Where he went wrong was probably, I'm sure I had some influence in that, being how vocal I was about Aaron Rodgers and company. But I think he went like 3x on his money or something like 4x on his money, and he had Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. So that tells you how good of a fucking team our boy Fritz built. Shout out to Fritz, long-time White Snake Nation member. With that said, I think it's about time that we go ahead and get in on week 7.
Week 7.
Let's do it. Week 7 all day. Chat's pulled up. I'm gonna pull up the game by game in a second. We're gonna start things off with the Green Bay Packers, Houston Texans. 56 is our total, Joe. Green Bay Packers currently favored at -3.5, which opened up at 3. We'll start things off with the Green Bay side. Talk to me about Green Bay.
Yeah, first off, let's see any trivia. Can anybody guess where I am this week? Put it in the chat. See if you can guess where I am this week.
Yeah.
Or Patio Joe
Well,
is. So.
I'll have to switch so I can take one more good look at this. There you go. Can you figure out where Patio Joe is? Those of you watching, if you're listening on audio, ignore this part. Or go back and find us on the YouTube. I say the YouTube like I'm fucking 170 years old. On the YouTube, man.
On the YouTube.
You go find us on the YouTube. But take your guess. Let us know. And Joe, you shout out whoever says it first. Whoever nails it first in the chat, you shout him out.
I will. All right, so back to this game. This is one of the highlighted games this week. We got 3 games that are at 56 or above, and this is one of them. We have Green Bay's coming in, kind of limping to the chat, and look at that. Paulie D gets it right away.
Paulie 8 Z's, bro.
Bedroom.
He's not sleeping today. My man just took some showdown action.
Away.
He took down some showdown action tonight. He is running off adrenaline. Let's go. I like it.
Yeah. So anyways, I look at this game, at quarterback position, Rodgers is going to be contrarian this week. We got 6 quarterbacks on FanDuel all over 8K. And so I think this is probably going to be the week where you might have to pay up because they're all in good positions. And so you got a guy coming in and, he got embarrassed after playing great first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. They had a week off, come in, they just got steamrolled down in Tampa. So he's going to be coming back. I like him as a GPP play. Probably the most chalky play of this game is going to be Aaron Jones. There's going to be just the, what happened last week because of Derrick Henry running all over them. Now in comes Aaron Jones at 8,500. You probably aren't going to be able to pay up for 2 running backs if you're going to pay up at quarterback too. This is a really tricky slate right now, first look. So Jones is going to be a decent play, but we also know that LaFleur could do things, just F things up, man. Throw in Jamal Williams, throw in A.J. Dillon, and just not give Jones his compliment. He didn't really do much last game. He got that touchdown, and that was about it, and he didn't really do much. Devontae obviously is a great play. You could always play him, but Bradley Roby has been doing well this year, stopping the number 1 receivers. I know A.J. Brown got 2 touchdowns last week, but he was 5 for 65, so he didn't do very well. At his price, I don't know if I like that. Tight end, Tanyan is fine, but I'm not going there. You don't need him. And that's about it for the Packers. But I think Aaron Jones is probably the one play that stands out, but I don't know. This game is weird right now to me. I just don't know where it's going to fall.
As someone who played Aaron Rodgers at 7,500 last week, and he had probably the worst game I've ever seen from him. last week. I am in the fact that I agree with you that I think Aaron Jones is going to be one of the most popular plays in the slate, and for good reason against the Texans, who are first in DVP fantasy points allowed to the position. It really makes me want to go back to Rodgers, especially we got a discount. It came down to $7K. This is a significantly better matchup, yet his price has come down to $7K. I do think that recency bias and the fact that Aaron Jones is kind of a standout in this spot may keep Aaron Rodgers' ownership at bay compared to where it should be. With that said, I like the idea of just pivoting and using Rodgers and Adams and these guys as a leverage off, or stacking Rodgers with Aaron Jones and getting a little bit different that way, because I do think while Aaron Jones will be popular, I don't think a ton of people are willing to play Aaron Rodgers with Aaron Jones. So definitely something here to kick this off. I'm into Scantling, who's got the highest one of the highest ADOTs. Tight ends I'm okay with, but it's really Aaron Jones, Adams, and Rodgers. Like those three guys, how can I work them in a way that I really want? Seems juicy, like you know what. With that said, what about the Texan side?
The Texan side, you have to look at Deshaun Watson starting off. He's been a steady incline of his fantasy point production, and 56 points next week. I mean, he's going to put up the total 56 points. So he's going to have to throw. And last week he was top one or two quarterbacks on the slate at 32 points. I think they're letting him loose. We saw the Packers D get kind of just embarrassed a little bit. But the thing is that we're not going to see a performance like we saw with Rojo kind of take over the game. David Johnson just doesn't seem like he's that type of runner. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't play him because he's playing 80% of the snaps, but he's kind of like this week's David Montgomery in so many ways, like a guy that just his ceiling just isn't really there, but he's not going to kill you too. He's probably going to get 2x. So I think if you wanted a salary relief or something, he's pretty safe for like I said, like 2x, but that's it. So I'm not willing. Will Fuller, I'm off this week, and that means maybe he's a great contrarian play, but he's got Jair Alexander, the guy who absolutely locked down Mike Evans, locked down Calvin Ridley the week before. Just stay away from him. Right now, he's probably top one or two corners in the league. Him and Verrett from the Niners are the two corners I just don't want to fuck with right now. So, like, to me, it's I'm off of Fuller. It would be maybe some of the other receivers, and then if Akins is out again, I think we really need to start taking notice with Darren Fells. He is in the group of tight ends where he can get you 5 for 50, and if he gets that falls into the end zone, he's going to make you value. So I feel like if Jordan Akins is out again, you got to look at Fells as maybe one of the best parts to get if you just want a piece of this game. Decent salary, he's $5,300. That Watson's going to go to him. So to me, I like Watson and Fells the most. DJ is a decent, just a very vanilla cash game floor option. But the receivers, maybe Brandon Cooks, but I'm off of Fuller this week.
Yeah, I think believe it or not, I mean, I'm good with most of the players in this game because I'm going to be into the Packers side. I'm going to want some bring back action. But I think as of right now, and I'm going to shout out Josh Jennings in the YouTube chat, Stephen B in the YouTube chat, because I think my favorite, at least in theory, as of Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, whatever you want to call it, early in the week, I kind of like the idea of Randall Cobb. But it's not just about the revenge, yes, it is Randall Cobb revenge. But it's more so about like what you said, man. You basically just called the outside secondary, the outside cornerbacks of the Green Bay Packers the Wu-Tang Clan, because you just said they ain't nothing to fuck with. And I think the middle of the field is really where you want to kind of attack. So I like the idea of the Fells, assuming Aiken is out, although we don't know that yet, and he's been getting more run. But more importantly, I do like the idea of Cobb, who's playing out of the slot and is very cheap, which is really going to help tie this stack together. Aaron Rodgers is still 7K. Devontae Adams, 7.9. If I want Aaron Jones in that stack too, that's still another 7K play. I'm going to need some value. I can't really bring it back with a Fuller at that point. We don't have the value on the slate, at least as of now, to make me comfortable. So I don't mind if the game stack itself is what forced me to pick a player like Cobb, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm not saying he's the only one. This is a good spot for David Johnson. I agree he's not the David Johnson of old, but this is a good spot for him on paper. The Packers have struggled against the run the last few years. But I think that Cobb is kind of interesting at 4,300 and will allow me. Him and DJ are probably my two favorites at the moment, but I would give it to Cobb because I like the idea of shootouts with the receivers better. Especially, running backs in the same game don't often correlate. I know it depends on, whatever it is. But with that said, I'm with you, Joe. I want something here. I think it might be Randall Cobb Revenge. Makes me a little nervous. Makes me feel a little bit dirty. But that's what we're here to do, is do dirties. With that said, let's move it on. We've got the Cleveland Browns, Cincinnati Bengals. We've got a 50 total, down from 52. The Browns opened up -3.5. They're down to -3. Joe, start me off with some Cleveland.
Yeah, because we like to get the dirty, so we're going to get to Cleveland. Don't want Baker, but I think this is Kareem Hunt week. Public's going to be off of him because, here's my rant. Here it is. Here it comes this week, okay? Beginning of the season, Kareem Hunt's just as good as Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb isn't as good as Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt should be the starter. Then the first couple weeks goes by. Nick Chubb does great. He gets hurt. Oh, here comes Kareem Hunt, running back 1. Then the last 2 weeks, what happened? Wait a minute. I thought he's great. Wait a minute. I thought he's supposed to be the best running back of ever. That's because he had bad matchups. Okay, he's playing the Steelers. Okay, you can't like that. Then the week before, he played the Colts. Didn't do very well at that. 2 of the best defenses in the league. So maybe the narrative is against bad defenses, he's going to torch them. And that's going to be what the Browns do. They're only going to beat the mediocre teams. The good teams are going to slap them around. We found out in the NFL there's 2 teams that aren't ready for primetime. That's the Browns and the Bills. They're done. Okay? So this week, though, it's Kareem Hunt week. This is the game where against the Bengals, they're going to pose their will on the running line. And I like his price at 7,100 to bounce back. Is like my favorite part of this offense. The corners of Cincy are actually pretty good. So to me, it's like the best part of this entire game is Kareem Hunt. We can move on to the Bengals.
I'm 100% agreeing with you. Kareem Hunt seems like a phenomenal play. If you're telling me you think the ownership's going to be lower than him than where it should be, I'm in. I'm fucking in.
Because of what happened the last 2 weeks. It's the recency bias. You have to always take that into consideration. Plus, you got the same guy. Here it is. This is going to be recency bias. I will guarantee you CEH at the same price on FanDuel is going to be higher owned because he ran for 200 yards and everybody in the nation saw him run. He's going on the road in case against Denver, and Le'Veon Bell's going to be playing. I bet you he's still going to be higher owned. Than Hunt, because Hunt the last 2 weeks didn't do very well.
No, I hope that is the case. I think that's the case. That will be the case with the casual players, right? I don't expect to see that from people who play DFS, religiously like we do, or who are interested with us. But listen, that's part of the edge that we have in DFS, and I'm with you, man. Phenomenal spot for Hunt. They don't want Baker throwing that ball right now. Baker's dealing with. He got like cracked ribs. He's got shit going on right now. You know what I mean? Like I'm not looking to invest. I will say the Odell Beckham price is very cheap and very interesting. But yeah, I agree. Kareem Hunt is the play here. Don't mind Austin Hooper either at tight end. Some cheap action. His targets have been going up. The Njoku wants to trade. He wants out of there. I'm with it. But yeah, Kareem Hunt is definitely the nuts of this team right now in this spot. What about the Bengals?
I think that there's so much on this slate, so much juicy stuff on this slate that this is like the Pauly D special, like the Broncos and the Patriots last week. He picked it right. He just wasn't enough points scored. So nobody's gonna have the Bengals this week, in my opinion. Burrow, the shine is off that. Justin Herbert is priced higher than Burrow is. Running backs, we don't even know if Mixon's hurt or not. If he doesn't play, then Gio Bernard is probably in cash consideration because you're going to need some salary relief somewhere, and he is 4,800 on FanDuel. You got to look at that. If Mixon is out, that's the one play. The receivers, T. Higgins seems to be the guy getting all the run, and is bubbling at the surface, ready to blow up. So to me, that's it. I don't even no Boyd, no AJ Green. I think you're chasing points with those two.
I gotta mute myself very quick. Yeah, I'll give Green props for showing some life last week, but I think that if I'm interested in anyone from the receiving corps, it's got to be Tyler Boyd. I mean, listen, Cleveland's secondary has not been good. I'm actually okay with Joe Burrow and that mindset that if I'm doing builds where like Kareem Hunt, I'm expecting to kind of pump, put pressure on the Bengals, force them to kind of throw the ball more. I can believe in that script. I think that Boyd I'm interested in because all year Cleveland's kind of had problems with the middle of the field. I would say it's a good spot for Drew Sample too. He just doesn't seem as consistently involved with the offense. So Boyd is probably my favorite because of the slot coverage and the price on him, $5,400 now for Boyd. He's only $100 more than T. Higgins, and that's not taking anything away from T. Higgins, man. He's been great. And like you said with Mixon, man, like me liking Hunt so much makes me not like Mixon a ton. If he's out, Gio Bernard becomes massive chalk at 4,500 on DraftKings, 48 on FanDuel, and that doesn't make me feel comfortable either. But it would make me probably like Boyd and Higgins, the receivers, a little bit more because I would think that they'd be more inclined to get those guys, the ball. And bottom line, this is not the most ideal spot for the running game anyway, right? One of the reasons that I think we like Kareem Hunt on the other side, in addition to his matchup being better. So I'm with you on that. But I am interested in Boyd, and if Mixon's out, I think I'm more interested in Boyd. With that said, we're moving on to the Carolina Panthers, the New Orleans Saints. We have a 51 total. The Saints currently 7.5-point favorites, which is where it opened. I mean, we're expecting Michael Thomas back, but we don't quite know. But we're going to talk about Carolina first anyway. McCaffrey's not what would they say? Week 9 McCaffrey?
Week 8.
Week 8.
Yeah, McCaffrey's not going to be back.
Right. But they said is what week. I want to know because I want to know when Mike Davis has it in his head. It's his last week to smash. You know what I'm saying?
I'm hearing week 8. So
okay.
This could be the last day for Davis.
Yeah.
So, Bridgewater, you don't need him. And Mike Davis, he's 7,700. I'm totally with it. If that's where you want, he's fine play. You saw a little bit of the bloom off the rose last week. He didn't do too well. 52 yards rushing. He had a touchdown, but he didn't get many targets. It was a weird game. Bears got a better defense than people think. But it's just weird that they think C-Mac's coming back on FanDuel, so they immediately let's just throw him 10,000. Who would play him even if he was playing this week? Who played him? It's like this. It's amazing. And then receiver wise, obviously, guys like DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, they basically have been productive every week. You just don't really know where he goes. I haven't really needed them at all this year, and I still think I don't. So it's basically Mike Davis for me.
I mean, on DraftKings, Mike Davis has just been, every week, viability. Even last week, did not have a very good game. Still found a way to get in the end zone in a bad matchup. Similar situation here, right? It's not the greatest matchup for traditional running backs, but for a running back that's in a system where he gets fed passes, different story. And I think this is somewhat viable. I'm okay with coming to some of these receivers, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore. I'm okay with them. But like you, Joe, I'm not terribly interested in anyone on this side. Which is strange to me because I feel like this game does have more upside than maybe I'm letting on, especially the fact that it's going to be in a dome. We got some really fast players, man. Anderson and Moore, some really fast players. Lattimore, in my opinion, has not looked as unbeatable this year as he has in years past. But I guess we'll find out this week. So maybe I'll come higher on the Carolina side as the week goes on, but I find myself more interested in the Saints side, and I'm curious to hear your take. Are we going to see Michael Thomas back or what, bro?
Yeah, he would have played last week if he didn't punch one of his teammates.
Right.
Or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, but I think the play in this game is Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
I think if you're paying up at running back this week, to me it's Alvin Kamara. I look at Zeke, I look at the other guys priced around him, and you could tell me that Henry. You can't tell me Henry's a better play this week. Going at home against Pittsburgh, who's a better defense. Okay, he's at home, but they just lost Taylor Lewan, torn ACL, their left tackle. So it's going to hurt their line and their production. So to me, Alvin Kamara is the pay-up running back this week, 9,300. He's almost a lock play. Everybody knows with the Panthers, what the Panthers do against running. They just let anybody can run against them. So I feel like he's going to be probably one of the most popular plays on the slate. Alvin Kamara, 9,300. Michael Thomas, obviously, I think he's going to be sort of contrarian this week, I think, because their secondary isn't bad. He's coming back from an ankle question, but I think he's healthy. But the guys around him are in really good spots too. So I just don't think that you're going to have to pick where you're going to spend up your 9K for. So I just think that D-Hop at 9K is way better than Michael Thomas at 8,600. In that, if I was pecking order, Adams is probably just as good too. So I'm probably off of Thomas and Cash this week, but he's fine in GPPs if you think this game's going to shoot out. What's the total? It's not even that. It's 51, which is like above 50. We're like, it's not even that high.
I know.
But yeah, so I don't mind this game. Saints coming off of a bye. I'd look at numbers of that, but to me, it's Kamara, and that's it really.
I mean, Kamara seems like one of the stone plays. Him and Aaron Jones, I think, will be extremely popular this weekend, and for good reason. Now on DraftKings, their prices is going to make things interesting because I think their prices are going to prevent you from playing too much of Devontae Adams or Michael Thomas, who I think are both interesting leverage plays, if you will. Or maybe you can find some diamond in the rough type value play somewhere, like Randall Cobb, for instance, who can help make these things work. But you're going to need a lot more than that to really make it all work if you want. But I do expect Jones and Kamara to be very popular, and for good reason. Carolina is supposed to be the worst team against the run. David Montgomery is just the drizzling shit, so that wasn't the case for him. But I expect to see Kamara completely come here and carry the load. Now, I'm interested to see what they do with Michael Thomas. We've never really seen them have a beef with Michael Thomas. We know that Peyton and Breeze don't tolerate any bullshit from their receivers. Brandon Cooks is a perfect example of that, right? When Michael Thomas was a rookie and just coming into the picture, Brandon Cooks got a little offended, right? He was feeling some type of way, wanted more targets, and what they do, they traded his ass. Despite the fact that it seemed like him and Cooks had such a fucking awesome relationship and they played so well together, they don't care. So, curious to see what happens in this particular role. Thomas, to me, is, like you said, more of a tournament play at this point. I don't see myself playing him over Devontae Adams, who seems to have a stranglehold on that role, if I was even going to spend up to begin with. That's assuming I'm not playing Kamara and Jones in the lineup already, which is a very tough sell for me. So I'm with you. Kamara is the play. The rest are tournament options to consider. Michael Thomas is certainly one of them in an interesting pivot. But let me ask you a question. Would you play, like, say, Jones and Thomas or Kamara and Adams if you had to pick one?
Aaron Jones and Michael Thomas, or Kamara and who?
And Devontae Adams.
I'll take Kamara and Adams.
Right? It just seems like I agree. I think that if I had to pick one, now ideally I'm trying to find ways to, split up the combination, do what I want, but I feel like that's going to be where people lean more so, and I think it's an interesting one, 2v2 to kind of, consider in your head, because these guys are in very similar situations, right? Kamara has been, perceptually, yeah, he's the man, but he hasn't always had this much volume when Michael Thomas has been around. So it is kind of a balanced, similar situation to each other. So I agree. That's going to be a fun one to decide. But Kamara looking like one of the top plays on the slate, no doubt. Let's move it over to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Tennessee Titans. We've got a 51.5 total down from 52.5. The Steelers opened up -1.5. They're still at -1.5. Talk to me about Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I sort of brought this up a little bit with Henry and stuff, but now Pittsburgh coming in, Ben Roethlisberger, 7,400. He's fine, but he is on the road, so you don't really know. James Conner, I think he is a decent GPP play this week. I think you can run on the Titans. I think that's what they're going to try and do. And he's been pretty steady all year, so I don't mind him. Receivers are where it's going to be kind of weird. Is Deontay Johnson back or not? I think if he is back and healthy, that makes him real interesting because he's priced below Claypool, and right now everybody loves Claypool. By the way, guys, join the nation and join in the chat. I kind of related playing Chase Claypool to doing anal, which was funny on the Saturday night chat. It was a very, very good analogy. So That's the kind of things that you get. That's the kind of hard hitting analysis that you get on
Could you
chat
briefly
that night.
explain that correlation? Because I did miss that in the Slack. I've heard the highlights. I've heard the. Can
Okay.
you briefly explain the analogy?
Okay. Okay. So we were like, I was saying about how like you have to play Claypool on Saturday on Sunday, and he's like dirty chalk. He's just like dirty. Like you play him because everybody in like the whole industry is going to be playing him because he's so cheap, and you got to play him because just in case he does go off again, you're screwed. So he's like dirty chalk, and I go, yeah, it's like the girl that you call up at Saturday on. It's like the girl that you call up on Saturday night, late at night, is gonna let you do anal. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a dirty chalk, but you do it anyways. You know what I'm saying? Like
It's the dirty chalk, but you do it anyways.
yes.
All right, so that did nothing for my understanding of it, but I get it. I get the analogy. I do. I understand what you mean. I'll leave it at that.
But yeah, so I don't know. Like this game is really weird. Like I could see it, being a shootout like last week, but I could also see it being really like low scoring and just a grinded out game between two teams that are like what 5-0 and 4-1 or something. So I don't know. I just think there's other better places with the Steelers. But you can look at them.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like every Tennessee game, for the most part, outside of their game against Denver, has been really good for fantasy purposes. Their defense is just bad enough to let it up. Their offense is just efficient enough to put it up. And Pittsburgh has this perception of being this really good defense, but I've not been impressed altogether, right? They looked good against the Giants, but did they really? They gave up 2 touchdowns to Slayton. You know what I'm saying? And then we saw them. Obviously, they played the Browns. The Browns was an easy one. Baker was coming in there banged up. It was a mismatch from the beginning. They don't have Chubb. It was just a lot of things going wrong in that situation. The Browns didn't look right. But we also saw Deshaun Watson, I think, come in here and have a pretty decent game, right? In the Houston Texans offense. We saw, what was it? Was it the Eagles that went out there and played them tough, right? They gave up a 72-yard touchdown to Miles Sanders. So their defense has been a little suspect. With that said, that matters to me because in order for me to really buy into the Steeler players, I need to know that there's going to be points scored, and I really do think there will be, which makes me want to like one of the Steeler players more than I maybe do. So Connor is obviously an option. I think he gets overlooked. Tennessee's allowed the 10th most fantasy points to opposing running backs, so I definitely think he's interested on a slate where he's going to get overlooked because we have guys like Jerick McKinnon who we haven't even talked about yet. We already talked about the 2 stud running backs in Kamara and Jones. So Connor's one of those running backs that's going to get pushed to the side. With that said, like you said, Deontay Johnson, 4,200 on DraftKings. This guy was the number 1 receiver basically until he decided, not decided, until he started getting hurt. So if he's back in, I would assume they're going to at least give him an opportunity to get some of that role back. And we don't need the full role. We just need the bits and pieces at 4,200 on DraftKings and 58 on FanDuel. So I really like Deontay Johnson if he's in. If he's out, unfortunately, I might have to bite the bullet or suck the and just suck it up and play Claypool, who I did not play much last week because I didn't like the fact that he was going to be so popular. Still got into the end zone. And this is a really good situation for wide receivers. Wide receivers in the passing game in general have been able to do dirties in Tennessee this season. So I'm interested in that situation. Juju's going to go overlooked, but Juju's ADOT is just terrible. He's become Larry Fitzgerald overnight. I don't know what happened. I had high expectations for Juju. You know what I mean? And he's really been like a Larry Fitzgerald type, middle of the field, very short. I don't know, but. Maybe, one of these weeks you got to figure he's going to put it together. Week 1, he had 2 touchdowns against the Giants. So it's still there. Maybe on the road, he relies on Juju more. We know Ben's not as good on the road. Maybe at home, he's feeling all big and brave, throwing to his outside receivers. Maybe on the road, he goes back to throwing over the middle of the field, and guys like Ebron will finally fucking put up a decent fantasy value. Maybe. Maybe not. What about the Tennessee Titans side?
Yeah, I wanted to say Ebron's another guy you got to look at, but man, he's been shitty the last few weeks in good matchups too. So it's like,
yes,
I don't know if you even want to go to his price, but I brought it up a little bit. I think if I had to go to any side of this game, I would go to the passing game. I'd look at Tannehill as a GPP option. I'd fade Derrick Henry this week. I think recency bias is going to have ownership going there, but like I brought it up before, Taylor Lewan, one of the best left tackles in the game, tore his ACL. That's gonna hurt his production. And he's facing a better defense too. So let's throw those 2 things in there. Let's attack the secondary of the Steelers. So AJ Brown, 6,800, great play. I love him. If Jonnu Smith is out, which he probably is going to be out this week, Anthony Ferkster is another going to be a chalky play just because of the way that it seems like Tennessee is just featuring their tight ends. And then guys like Humphreys and Corey Davis, if he's back, it's fine too. But to me, I think AJ Brown is a great play. His price at 6,800 isn't bad at all, and I think I don't mind his matchup either. I think he can beat these secondaries.
Yeah, I think that I think the status of Corey Davis, I'm assuming he's going to be back. He was just on the COVID list, right? Hasn't that been right? Mm-hmm. So if he comes back, I think that is going to impact Adam Humphreys a little bit because Humphreys has really excelled, especially last week. He went out there. Look, I'm not saying he's unplayable or anything like that, but I do think that injuries have a lot to do with certain people benefiting. And Jonnu Smith is also questionable, I think. So the status of those two players matter. AJ Brown does not, right? Those players don't matter to me about AJ Brown. He's still a good play. I know his price is elevated. He's still the guy. Last year, he was like the only guy Tannehill even threw to. So that to me is kind of locked up. But as far as the viability of Adam Humphreys, that's going to depend to me on injuries, injury status of Corey Davis, of Jonnu Smith, those types of players. I'm with you on Henry. I'm not really into Henry. I think Tannehill could be an interesting contrarian quarterback tournament play, but there's too many quarterbacks I genuinely like for me to really bite the bullet and play someone that I don't really like. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just kind of like, well, maybe he's just not a volume guy. And DraftKings we're always looking for volume. It's just not him, but he's super fucking efficient, man. He's so fucking efficient. So. Never want to rule him out, but realistically, very hard for me to click his name, and even in a spot like this. Not because I don't think it's a good spot for him, just that there are so many other spots that look better. But I think that maybe I need to be a little more open-minded. AJ Brown for sure. If Jonnu's out, Ferkster will be popular. We saw what he was able to do last week. Just kind of went nuts at a very cheap price, and he remains cheap. So that could be a thing to look out for. We need some news action come Sunday to be able to make the ultimate decision and do the ultimate dirty. This next game doesn't require too much thought. It's the Buffalo Bills visiting my beloved New York Jets. We've got a 45 total, down from 46. The Bills opened up minus 12.5. Then they realized that wasn't high enough. They raised it to minus 13.5. Still not fucking high. You can make this thing minus 35. It's still not high enough. Talk to me about the Buffalo Bills first.
Yeah, I think, I'm looking at the prices of the quarterbacks, and you can have Josh Allen at 8,800. With the quarterbacks that are around him, go right ahead. He'll be 2% owned, so you can go have him. Running backs, I'm not really keen with Singletary or Moss, so you don't need it. I think the best play from this side, and he's cash game viable for sure, is Stephon Diggs. He's had well over 2x in every one of his games. He's a integral part of the offense, he got 16 targets 2 games ago. I just don't know how much they're going to need to pass. It seems like it's going to be a very business-like atmosphere. They're going to go in and win the game. But I don't mind Diggs and the Buffalo defense, of course. But he's 5K. I think you need to pay down at defense somewhere this week to try and get off that, try and get off somewhere else.
Man, I'm with you. When I look at the Bills team, what makes me so hesitant, and this is a phenomenal matchup for receivers for the pass game, the results I don't think have really like added up to what's been happening. So if you look at DVP, the Jets are 16th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, 18th in quarterbacks, 7th in running backs. It's actually not like based off their positions, based off the players they have. That's actually not how it should be. Their personnel indicates they should be a little bit better against the run and very vulnerable against the pass. The problem is the Jets' offense has been so anemic that teams do not have to pass very much on them. And they're just running the ball and getting the ball to the running backs enough to where eventually they're going to break through and score some points. We saw like when they played Raheem Mostert, it was really like one big run. And even McKinnon, who also had a big run, it was really one big run. And a lot of situations, even Gordon, he was on track to be like mediocre in that game. And then what happened at the very end of the game? He broke it and had a big fucking run. So a lot of the issue, I think, with looking at Allen at this price and looking at his receiving options, and it's just you're worried about, are the Jets going to be able to hang in there? I think if the off chance, and I'd say off chance because I expect Flacco to play, if the off chance Sam Darnold is able to play, that certainly helps in the viability. I do think Darnold is talented enough to where he could at least find a way to score on a Buffalo defense that has not been very good. But in reality, it's hard to look at this Jets team who just got rid of another key defensive player and really think they'll be competitive at all. So for fantasy purposes, it really makes you worried. So yeah, phenomenal spot for Diggs. Nobody here to stop Diggs. I think John Brown is an interesting bounce back play on the Monday night slate. He was extremely popular and did nothing, literally a goose egg. I can see him doing dirts on this one while the Jets try to control stuff on Diggs. But it's hard to commit. Very hard to commit. I'll tell you one thing. If you have the money, which I don't see how you will, but any defense against the Jets has been as safe as it gets. I'll say that, especially if Flacco is the quarterback. It's not nothing against Flacco. It's that the Jets got no offensive line, and look who the fuck they're throwing to. They just got rid of their best player, Le'Veon Bell. They don't give a damn. So it's hard. Any viable players on the Jets?
Jameson Crowder, I think is viable, especially on DraftKings. This is the second time they played this year already, correct?
Yes. Yeah, week 1 they played.
So, week 1 they already played, and he had 13 targets, 7 for 115 and a touchdown. So, I mean, you don't want to totally go off of that, but different quarterbacks and stuff. But if there was one play, it'd be Crowder. I don't mind it at all.
I do think the receiving options are kind of interesting. So Crowder, especially if Darnold it does end up playing, Crowder is the clear, that's Darnold's boy. It's whatever. But if Darnold plays, it's also interesting to consider a guy like Rashad Perriman for $3,700 on a slate where we don't have a lot of options for value. And the only reason I bring it up is because it's hard to envision the Jets not trailing in the situation. And even if they weren't trailing with Frank Gore and the Michael Pirine as their running backs, it's hard to envision them being able to run. They couldn't run the ball with Le'Veon Bell. They're going to run the ball with Frank Gore and the Michael Pirine. It just seems unrealistic. So I do think the Jets will throw a lot. So I do think the receivers are kind of interesting. Crowder, if you're looking for a main play, and Crowder has a decent ceiling at his price points, right? Perriman, Jeff Smith, these guys, they're just cheap. So maybe that you use them to kind of connect the dots and be able to get those Adams, Thomas with the Jones and the Kamaras and all the who has and the whatnots or whatever have you. So yeah, maybe there's more viability here than I thought. It's funny too because in week 1, despite the final score, that game was actually a lot closer than the final score indicated. It was the Bills kind of pulling away a little late. So perception at its peak right now against the New York Jets. So something to consider. Rightfully so, though. Rightfully so. Back to some fireworks. We've got the Detroit Lions, Atlanta Falcons. We have a 56.5 total. The Falcons are currently 2-point favorites at home. It opened up at 3, but now it's down to 2. Talk to me about the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, this is going to be, I think, to me, this is the premier game that people are going to stack. Just go to where the Falcons are and stuff. We got 2 defenses that will give up points left and right. So I think that once again, Matt Stafford is going to be a pretty chalky quarterback. He was 45% owned in cash games last week on FanDuel. It's crazy to me. But he's in a great matchup. The Falcons have been giving up the second or third most fantasy points at quarterback, so I don't mind it, but I'm not, really. I just think you can pay up and you can fit in guys you want. And then DeAndre Swift is everybody's darling this week. I wouldn't just go push everything in, your chips all in, because Matt Patricia will figure out that it should be Adrian Peterson getting 10 carries now this week and screw it all up once we think that DeAndre Swift, this is his backfield. So, heed warning. That's all I'm saying. Galladay's got a great matchup. We know this secondary can be beat. He'll be popular. And then the tight ends, Hawkinson is fine also.
I agree. I think I do expect Stafford to be popular. No team has allowed more fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks than Atlanta. Kenny Galladay, phenomenal spot. He was really chalky last week. Here, I'm sure he'll be popular again this week. But there are a few more competitive games, I think. Whereas last week there were really like 2 games that stood out amongst the rest. I think this week we have like 3 or 4. So maybe his ownership's a little bit lower. Phenomenal spot regardless. And T.J. Hawkinson, man, tight ends, like just Atlanta can really make a superstar when it comes to the tight end position. I mean, they could do it everywhere, I know. But there'll be guys you never heard of that have their biggest game. I mean, last week, if it wasn't for like the sharing the snaps, Rudolph or Irv Smith, if it was just one guy playing all those snaps, one of them would have had a monster game. They kind of split it, so they both did okay. But phenomenal spot for the tight end. This is a great spot for Hawkinson. I know the price is elevated a little bit. Maybe that keeps the ownership down. Really, really like TJ Hawkinson this week at 5K at tight end, which again, like, it's not really value. So I'm gonna need some help, which is the only reason I'm considering the dirty guys down low. But yeah, I'm with you. The running game I'm not that into. Swift did fine last week. We have too many other good options. Atlanta's good against the run. The actual run itself, ask Alexander Madison how good against the run Atlanta actually is. It's pass catching running back. So unless you think Swift and Peterson are getting a ton of targets from the backfield, I expect Galladay, Hawkinson, those kind of guys, Jones, maybe even Amendola, to see majority of the workload. But phenomenal game to stack, absolutely. What about the Fatlanta side?
I think the one player that's going to go overlooked this week is going to be Todd Gurley. We know that you can run against Detroit. They did okay last week against Robinson, so maybe they short that up. But we know Gurley's going to get the goal line look, so I wouldn't mind taking a more closer look to him. He didn't have a great week last week, but he got 20 carries. And then the week before, he got in the end zone a couple times, so I don't mind that. Obviously, the receivers, it's going to be kind of a who you want. Pick your poison. They're both the same price on FanDuel, basically, between Ridley or Julio. So it doesn't really matter to me which one you think. I think that they're both great plays. If I had to pick, I would go Ridley in cash, Julio in GPPs, just because Ridley has been pretty damn safe, except for one game against Jair Alexander. So that's how I would play it. I would go Ridley in cash, Julio in GPPs. Tight end, Hayden Hurst is one of the guys, like I said, he might do fine. He might fall in the end zone like he did last week. He made a big play, but don't be expecting much. He could also get you 2 for 30 also. So get off. I wouldn't go get off of. I would get off of Hayden Hurst. So to me, I like Ridley the most, then Julio, some with Gurley. Matt Ryan is fine too, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. Matt Ryan coming off an awesome game. I like the Gurley call, man. I do. Definitely more of a tournament thing. I think the receivers like Ridley make more sense in cash, but I do like the idea of Gurley because he's the way that if you look at this game and you're like, how am I going to get a piece of this, man? Ridley and Jones are both expensive. I'm going to have to pick one, and I'm going to need some value to make it work. It's not like Hawkinson and Galladay are cheap. So when all these things running in your head, Gurley does seem like he makes the most sense as the bringback when you consider from a fantasy production standpoint what he's been able to do. It would also provide you with some leverage, assuming Ridley, Jones, and Matt Ryan are somewhat popular, and I'm assuming they will be after what they did last week. I think a guy like Gurley can go kind of overlooked, and Detroit has been worse against running backs than they've been against the past games. That's the truth. So I think Gurley is a sneaky bringback in that situation. I do side with Ridley over Julio this week. Julio just hasn't been as consistent, whereas Ridley, even in last week, where a week where Julio went nuts, Ridley still scored. So Ridley is just the consistent one right now. He's the one I'd side with as well. But I like the Gurley take, Joey. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And by the way, Nation, if you haven't hit the like button, please do, those of you grinding out with us in the chat. Appreciate you hanging out. Hopefully you guys are getting a chance to interact, do dirties, talk to Slate out yourself. But we need you all to hit the like button and please share the show. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We do a lot of free content here, and all we ask is you show us a little bit of love, a little bit of support so that we can continue to do what we do, and that is bring you the DFS goodness and do dirties on the YouTube and the Twitch. With that said, we are going to move on to the next game. Last 1 o'clock game, we have the Dallas Cowboys, Washington football team, 46 total, down from 47.5, probably after the Monday night fiasco. Dallas opened up as 2-point favorites. They're now 1-point underdogs talk to me about. Listen, everybody ESPN's trying to be all slick and call him the Red Rifle. They initially were calling him the Red Rocket. Listen, I know that's a thing for a dog's thing, and it's like a nasty thing, but that's the truth. They were calling him the Red Rocket until somebody said, "Do you know what a Red Rocket is, bro?" And then all of a sudden, this Red Rifle bullshit. So I see people, it's not the rifle. No, it's the Red Rocket. Talk to me about the Red Rocket, Andy Dalton.
You don't need him. It's I think it's a difficult matchup. Washington secondary is not that bad, so I don't think you need him. I'm not. I think he was given the keys to a good car, but this game in general is I just don't like it. I think it's going to be a low scoring, just fumbling teams away. I kind of like the defenses of Washington a little bit more. I don't know. To me, it's Zeke at 9,500. I'm not looking at. I don't know. I don't really like much. CD Lamb is probably my favorite play. He's at 6,200. I just don't. He's probably the safest play that I think, because even last night he went 7 for 64. Even in a bad game script, he went 7 for 64. So I feel like he's going to still be, productive no matter what. So it's basically CD Lamb for me in this game.
Yeah, this one's a tough one. We were talking about perception. We saw the line move because of how bad they looked against Arizona. And, let's be honest, their offense did not look great. I'm not saying it was Dalton's fault. Dalton had, no time, it seemed like. Their offensive line, we know they lost Smith, and they lost another offensive lineman. They looked banged up. Dalton didn't really have a lot of time at all against the Arizona pass rush. However, it is not his fault that Ezekiel Elliott fumbled the ball twice, leading to touchdowns. Now, you could argue that the pick was certainly his fault, which it was. You could argue that he should have had another one earlier in the game. He got lucky. The guy missed it. Certainly viable. But my point is, with perception now being so low on Dalton and the receivers here, it makes me kind of interested. We're playing a Washington team that's played at a very fast pace so far this year. Granted, their defense has not been horrendous, but Dallas's defense has certainly been a joke. So if Washington is able to move the ball, and you don't think there's a way Dallas loses this game, I can just see this game kind of sneaking under the radar, and there being, even if it's not the game stack that does well, just there being a lot of fantasy viable plays. Ezekiel Elliott, I think, in ownership-wise, and rightfully so, will be fairly low. He's coming off of a terrible game, and I have a feeling that, kind of like the same way I go to Rodgers, it's hard to envision Rodgers having another bad game. It's hard to envision Zeke not wanting to bounce back after that terrible taste in his mouth. So I think Zeke's kind of interesting when you consider he's around the same price as Aaron Jones, and Kamara is going to have a fraction of the ownership, at least in my opinion. And Dalton Schultz, 3,900. This is a spot where tight ends have succeeded against Washington, so we'll have to see if Dalton swings that way. But I think there could be some. I don't know. I can't pinpoint what I like the most here, but I think there's something in this game that I may want from the Dallas side at the very least. What about the Washington side?
Washington side, I think that it's a Terry McLaurin bounce back. I just don't know how confident you can be in Kyle Allen throwing to him, but it's funny, he's still 7,100. It's weird how they won't lower his price very much, and he hasn't really done much. It's kind of weird. So that makes it, McLaurin's basically the only play. I don't mind Gibson, but they still don't seem to, they want to keep McKissick around. That just kind of muddles things. So to me, it's McLaurin. Logan Thomas seems to also, he's one of those tight ends that'll be in your pool that he can get 3 for 40, and if he falls into the end zone, he makes value.
I when I look at this, right? So I think there's two ways I'm playing this. Either I'm looking at the Washington defense, right? If I'm going under the Andy Dalton and the Cowboys, and listen, the Cowboys' offensive line struggles are real, right? We know they don't got Smith. They just lost another one. I forgot who it was. I think somebody in the chat mentioned it. I fucking missed it. Oh, here we go. Martin, Frederick, and Smith all out. Washington's. This is from our boy Tenelson in the chat. Shout out to Tenelson. Always see him, one of the regulars for the show. But he's right. He makes a really good point. The offensive line struggles for Dallas could be very real. Washington, one of their strengths is really their pass rush. So I think either we have to play McLaurin and work in Zeke, work in some of these receivers from Dallas, maybe even consider Andy Dalton, or you would take advantage of the fact that Washington's defense is very cheap. And is it an opportunity to force some turnovers potentially if Dalton's in trouble? So this is definitely seems kind of like a polarizing spot. Is Washington going to get floored and this game shoots the fuck out because most Dallas's games do? Or do we see something similar happen to what we saw in the most recent Dallas game where the offensive line is just really struggling? Dalton is not nearly as mobile as a guy like Dak, not nearly as diverse as a guy like Dak. And in that sense, Washington's defense just seems too cheap. So definitely think it's something we're gonna have to really weigh out by Sunday because I think it matters. With that said, we're moving on to the 4:00 game show. We got another shootout. We've got the Seattle Seahawks, Arizona Cardinals. We have a 56.5 total, up from 56. Seattle currently 3.5-point favorites, but they opened at 3. Talk to me about Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, this is probably. I mean, this is probably the game of the week that everybody's going to be watching. I think that. I mean, it's Russell coming off of the bye into Arizona off of a short week. It's probably for. Oh wait. Arizona's lost 2 games, so pretty much it's a big divisional game. So I mean, obviously Russ is fine at 8,700. There's not much that you can say bad about him, but the Arizona defense is pretty damn good. So I would just want pieces. I wouldn't want like piece of just the passing game, maybe DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, depending on who has a better matchup. I'm not scared of Patrick Peterson, so if you want to play DK Metcalf, play DK Metcalf. He's the man, okay? He's been one of the most consistent receivers in the league, so I don't mind him. I don't mind Chris Carson. I think people will forget about him either. So, but yeah, I don't mind that. But to me, it's definitely Russ. If you want to play him in cash, that's fine. I prefer him in GPPs and is stacking this game, but it's DK for me. I don't know if he's not a cash play this week. I don't think, but I like stacking this side of the game.
Yeah, I mean, the Seattle offense is just tremendous. I think Arizona's defense has been, they've looked pretty good, but I don't think they've been tested a whole ton. This will be a serious test for them. Russ is AK. Him and Metcalf as a stack is kind of tough on DraftKings. AK 7.2, especially because that means you're sacrificing a lot of the running backs that we talked about who are expensive. Chris Carson is a little bit easier to play. Now, again, I think the running back ownership this week will be very concentrated, and I think that bodes well for a guy like Carson at 6'4", who could go overlooked. So like you said, I'm not saying not to play Metcalf, who I think is in a phenomenal spot, and I think is just too physical and too big and strong for even a guy like Patrick Peterson. Lockett, we know, a very serious deep ball threat. I'm good with all of it, but I think Carson is the one who's the most interesting. Because number one, he's playable. His price is only 6'4" on DraftKings, 7.6 on FanDuel. That's within reach. And more importantly, he's at a position that we think the ownership is going to be heavily concentrated in. So I do think Carson's interesting for tournaments for sure. Shout out to Stephen B, who's in there encouraging everyone to hit that like button. We do appreciate y'all for hanging out with us, tuning in with us. Hit the like button really helps us out. Share the show. All this stuff really helps us out. The more we get, the more resources we have, the more we're able to make improvements. Like this cool new overlay thing we made, right? I made this myself. You like this? The whole neon thing? It's pretty sick. I think it's cool. If I say so myself. You look good, Neon Joe. I'm just saying. What about the Cardinals side?
Yeah, I mean, you should have seen me when I was stripping back in the early days, man. When I was up on the stage, all the girls were putting the money in. The neon would just make my ass look just amazing.
Wonderful.
But to me right now, Kyler Murray is almost. I've never felt better about a cash game quarterback, which is probably bad, but I feel like he is like the quarterback on Sunday to play in your cash game lineups. He is above 8K, but he's not above other guys. He is averaging 3x on FanDuel every game. So that's what you're looking for. He's facing the Seahawks, who give up the most fantasy points to the quarterback position. I don't know what else there's like. If you don't, the good thing is that you can get Murray and get your exposure to Hopkins in another way, through him, and play another receiver and open up some more money in cash that way. Now, if you want to stack them, obviously that's the way to go. We have to take note with what Christian Kirk has done the last few weeks. He seems to have emerged, especially because people are trying to clamp down on Hopkins. Hopkins didn't have that big of a game last week. He only had like 2 or 3 catches. He didn't do that well. So I don't know if he's worth 9K, but he's in a great spot because the Seattle defense is terrible, or their secondary is at least. So, and then the running back situation, Kenyon Drake emerged. I think that you can play him. Cautiously. I wouldn't just all of a sudden throw him in there. He had a couple good runs, and that was it. And then I think it's basically, Chase Edmonds you're doing 23 teams, and that's it. But to me, it's Kyler Murray. That's the play this week.
Damn it! That whole time my mic was off. Fuck. Anyway. Yeah, I was muted. My bad. But anyway, no, that was me. I'm muted. I freaking, you could hear me, but the nation couldn't. So what I was saying about the, shout out to the chat for letting me know. But so again, I know you heard it already, Joe, but I'm going to say it again. Kyler Murray, what he's been able to do on the ground is pretty incredible, right? He's running a lot. It's really become a one-man show on that team. And I think DeAndre Hopkins is the most interesting from an ownership perspective. Again, we talked about Metcalf, Lockett. We've talked about Adams. We've talked about Michael Thomas coming back. All these guys priced under DeAndre Hopkins, who has been underwhelming to say the least for the last couple of weeks. So in a spot against Seattle, I don't know. I'm curious to see what the ownership is on Hopkins, especially considering we know people are going to try to spend it at running back. So the combination of all those things going together, to me, make DeAndre Hopkins very interesting. I'm cool with Kirk. He looks like he's trending in the right direction, but I think Hopkins is the most interesting, and I agree with you on Kyler Murray. I think he's definitely on the table. Running backs, Seattle's just been more vulnerable against the pass, so I like the Murray Hopkins. I think I like that more. I do. Okay. Shout out to CEH 1300. Says, good thing I could read lips. Awesome. I like it. Apparently, man, this trending 2020 CK for president. I didn't say it, man. Some other people are saying it, and I can't say I disagree with it though. I can't. We'll have to see. With that said, moving on, Joe. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs, Denver Broncos. We have a 48.5 total. The Chiefs currently favored by 10 on the road. Talk to me about Patrick Mahomes. Apparently, his mama don't like the name Pat, so Patrick Mahomes. Holla.
Yeah, oh boy. I mean, this is a division game that it's one of the games where I just don't know if you need it. I think that Casey could come out and do a very, business like approach. I think you could play the tight ends. I think the passing game is fine. Mahomes is fine, but it's just one of those games. I just don't. I think there's other places that are more attractive. Mahomes at 9,000 is fine. I just don't think you need to play him. Like CH is a great, I think, contrarian play. Even though I think I was saying earlier that people are going to play him and stuff, but people are going to think that Le'Veon Bell is coming back and he's going to get all these carries, and I think CH could prove to be okay. But Denver's also a tough matchup. So do you really need it? You go to the passing game. Tyreek Hill hasn't really been an 8,000 receiver. He really hasn't. He's been 2x almost all year. I don't know if you really need it. It's hard to understand their passing game and where it goes. It's basically Kelsey, I think. To me, it's just Kelsey that's like the safest part, and everybody else is you kind of don't really know. It could be Mecole Hardman week again, because Hardman got a big fat 0, and everybody was on this jock on Monday night. But he did nothing. So I think it's Kelsey, if anybody.
So Mahomes going to be low owned. He's awesome. Denver's defense, I don't give a fuck what nobody says, man. That was the most points the Jets scored this year was against this Denver defense. In half of the game, Sam Darnold had like a separated shoulder. So I don't give a damn. Pat Mahomes is going to slice these dudes up. Just a matter of, does Denver fight back enough? And that's tough because Kansas City's defense has actually been improved. They've actually looked like not just, not bad enough for their team to lose. They've genuinely looked decent this year. So I do have some interest in Mahomes. I'm with you on the Mecole Hardman, man. Monday, he was just chalk city, just didn't work out, got a fat 0. And I can see people kind of overlooking him this week, but this is, as long as Sammy Watkins is out, it's looking like a pretty good spot for Hardman at 4,500. Though you can make the same argument for Demarcus Robinson, who's 3,400, is projecting for the same amount of points for us for some reason. Tyreek Hill, 6,400 on DraftKings. I agree with the 8K on FanDuel, kind of like what? But 64 on DraftKings, again, the same thing we talked about ownership-wise. We talked about D-Hop up top, Metcalf, all these guys that are expensive on DraftKings. And you got Tyreek Hill, who's 6,400. That just seems a little too cheap. So he stands out. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, matchup-wise, it doesn't look all that great. Denver has actually been decent against the run, it looks like. But like you said, it's his last time to smash. I think that must be what he's saying before Bell arrives. And also, if Denver is unable to do anything offensively, you can see the Chiefs just getting up ahead by 14 to 21 points and just continuously running the ball to kill clock. They did that against the Bills. They ran the ball a lot against the Bills, especially when they were in the lead. So some potentially fantasy viable plays, if you will. Travis Kelce, you sumbitch. Man, it's easy to play him on a Monday night slate. Not always easy to pay it for 6,300 for a tight end on a main slate.
No.
Right? Not always so easy. I don't know. No. Tough ones. What about Denver?
Denver is another thing. Like, you're not going to play Drew Lock. You're just not going to. Running backs, Melvin Gordon should be back, so that's going to muddle things up between him and Lindsey. Wide receivers, I think Tim Patrick seems to be like pretty much a pretty bougie, kind of pick these days. He's kind of emerging in the same place where Cortland Sutton has. So that's fine. Jerry Jeudy has not lived up to expectations yet compared to some of the other rookie wide receivers, but he hasn't really been having, he hasn't really had a good quarterback then. Watch to see if Noah Fant comes out. He is a central part of their offense. If he does, I think he's a good GPP play, but there's not much to like here with Denver.
I agree. We'll see the status of Gordon. Lindsey's price has come up. He's 5,300 now on DraftKings, where Gordon's only 5,500. So even if Lindsey is the guy, it's really just an ownership thing. I do believe the Chiefs have a vulnerability against the run. It's the pass that they've been really successful against. And the issue is that their offense is so damn good that teams don't really have time to try to run against them because they have to start throwing immediately. And again, their secondary's been pretty good. So maybe Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick continues to impress. I think that there is a chance these guys go. Noah Fant's another big one, right? He missed last week, so he's pretty big. And also keep an eye on this Albert Akua. I don't even know. I'm not even going to try. The backup tight end was 2,500 on DraftKings, 48 on FanDuel. Just a punt. I think he got like 6 targets in the absence of Noah Fant last week. So something to consider, but it's hard to really get too excited about anyone from Denver. But you know what? I think that's going to be the case for a lot of people. So perhaps we see some low ownership. But a lot more exciting games so far on the slate, or at least more exciting teams on the slate than this one. The next one I'm not as enthusiastic about, but we'll talk about it. It's the San Francisco 49ers, New England Patriots. We have a 45 total, down from 45.5. Patriots are at home. They opened up -3.5. They're down to -2.5. They looked like complete dog shit last week to Denver. With that said, we're going to talk about the 49ers, who talk about a bounce back game, just completely trounced the Rams. They got some of the defensive backs back, and they looked a whole lot better defensively. Talk to me about the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, the Niners, they got Jimmy G, revenge game, coming back to New England. What if Brady would have stayed another year? This would have been like Twitter would have shut down if this game would have played, like Garoppolo versus Brady coming back. Oh man, it would have just been crazy. But Jimmy G at 6,600, I don't think you need it. Running back, man, if you knew that McKinnon was going to get all the carries, I wouldn't mind it. But they got this guy Jermichael Hasty who came in and did the job last week too. So I just don't know if that can happen. Plus Jeffrey Wilson is there, so cross that out. I would probably be looking at. I'd probably be looking at Deebo Samuel. If anybody for this Niners offense besides maybe Kittle, but I feel like they're gonna scheme to take Kittle out of the game. Somehow double team him, whatever. So they might leave some options for Deebo Samuel, who's played 85% of the snaps last week, went 6 for 66 with a touchdown. You could see his role growing in this offense as he's getting more healthier. So I feel like this is the cheapest we might get him. So I like him out of all the other guys. Ayuk, I feel like is a gadget play. He could score. He could do nothing. He's just been lucky to get in that end zone at one time. And, Kittle also I think is a good pivot if you wanted to go up there off of Kelsey. But I feel like he's going to get the Belichick treatment this week.
What I'd like to know, so we know Mostert's out. Jerick McKinnon did not get a whole ton of work last week. And Jeff Wilson was out last week. We'll have to check on his status this week. But it was really the rookie. Oh, I think he's a rookie, right? Jermichael Hasty, who got majority of the work. Mm-hmm. So he's like 4K on DraftKings. So I'm going to be interested in him if he gets, if Wilson is out again. If Wilson is in, then it becomes kind of a shit show. But I do think you could run on the New England Patriots. Lindsey had over 100 yards last week. It's just a matter of who. I think McKinnon is the one I think most will feel comfortable going to, and rightfully so. He's been the guy, and Mostert's been out. McKinnon's been the guy. Last week, for some reason, they decided to change things up a little bit. I'll be following along to see if we have any expectation for it to go back to McKinnon, because if you're going to play McKinnon, who I expect to be somewhat popular, you better be pretty damn sure he's not going to get vultured or torched by anyone like this. We've seen Jeff Wilson in the past have a decent role. We know he's capable. We would expect McKinnon to be more involved in the pass. We've literally seen this exact situation. McKinnon was the guy. I'm not sure why all of a sudden they flipped to Hasty more last week, but yeah, McKinnon right now looks like a pretty damn good play. Deebo Samuel only 5K seems decent, but I agree with you. I think they'll try to game plan, probably more so for Kittle, but also I think for a little bit of Deebo, at least for those screen type situation plays. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of these running backs. It seems like the running back would be the way to go in this situation. What about the Patriots?
It's weird to say. I don't think there's anybody the Patriots are. I really don't. I'm trying to. No, I don't. No, sorry. Maybe Edelman on DraftKings.
I was just gonna say. I think Edelman on DraftKings is really the only one. I mean, I'm always fine with Cam, because when you're playing Cam, bro, it's like you're playing a running back that could also throw. That's essentially what you're doing. Like, he's actually running so much, like design runs so much, that I think you always have to consider him on DraftKings. Edelman, like, Cam's the one dude, like, I love doing like double stacks, having at least 2 receiving options with my quarterback. Cam's the one of the exceptions. There's a couple of them out there. Cam's one of them. I'm good with just him and Edelman and just playing in better plays. But yeah, Edelman at 5K is kind of interesting on DraftKings, and Cam himself always in play. But Paulie D in the chat likes James White. Holla, holla, do it, dirty style. Last game, Joey. Last game. Jacksonville Jaguars. Your Los Angeles Chargers. 49 is the total. Chargers currently favorite by 7.5 at home. Talk to me about Jacksonville.
And the Chargers are favored by 7.5 points at home. Man, I ain't a betting man, but I take the Jags and the points, man. Chargers don't seem to blow out anybody if they win. Jags, I think Minshew makes a decent GPP play. The Chargers have been giving up like third or fourth most fantasy points to the quarterback, so I don't mind that at all. Running backs, James Robinson, I think the bloom is off that rose a little bit. It's hard to run against the Chargers, so I wouldn't do that. DJ Chark's going to get the Cameron Hayward treatment. That leaves out, I think, Keelan Cole to be interesting, as well as Laviska Shenault. But I don't know if you need them, but they're not bad salary relief. That's it for the Jags. We do. I have 17 down here. I see 17. Yeah. Oh, now I see 16. Uh-oh. What did I say?
It's me again with my damn muted mic. We must have hurt somebody's feelings because we're losing likes. We're down from 17 to 16. Now we're down to 15. I don't know what's happening. People are changing their mind. Well, you know what? We're not here to, take people's feelings into account. We're here to break down some football action. So I don't know who you are. I don't know why you're a dick, but you are, and such is life. With that said, moving on to the Jacksonville side, I agree. I mean, Minshew's actually been more decent than I've been giving him credit for. I have to admit, just from a fantasy value perspective, he's consistent. It's just he's not really showing a ton of ceiling. The Chargers have been playing fast, but they've also been. It's not like they're giving up a ton of points. It's weird. They've given up the fourth most fantasy points to quarterbacks, the 25th to running backs, the 21st to wide receivers. It's really been tight ends where they've kind of been getting done up. And it's not like this is a quarterback who loves to throw to his tight ends. So, I mean, DJ Chark, I guess I'm going to have to, and I'm always good with Chanel 4,500 seems too cheap. That seems too cheap on DraftKings. He's now cheaper than Keelan Cole. Like, listen, Chark and Cole are averaging more targets, all that good stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to get too sold on the Jacksonville players. There's just too many good games. But Chark 5,500 is very cheap. Talk to me about your Chargers.
All right, so I think I think a good GPP play this week is Justin Herbert. He kind of stuck out to me at 7,500. We know that the Chargers are gonna he's gonna pass a lot. He's passed over 30 times or average over 35 times a game. He's thrown for 9 touchdowns in 4 games. He also has a little bit of rushing ability, which I don't mind too. So I don't mind Herbert as a GPP quarterback. I think he'd be fine. The question, I think, is who you're going to pick at running back. Is it going to be Kelly or Justin Jackson? I think either of them, both of them are in great spots. I really don't know who to lean to. I think Kelly would probably get the goal line carries, and I think Jackson's going to get a little bit more of the passing game. So depending on their price on DraftKings, they're pretty much the same on FanDuel. I probably would lean maybe Kelly on FanDuel and Jackson on DK. But if you have a feeling towards either one of them, I think they're both good plays. But they might tutor each other. You know what I'm saying? Like they might just do enough to not make value for each other. So, but then the wide receivers, I think you can look at Keenan Allen. Have to, especially with Eckler being out. He got hurt last game. Let's remember that, and that's why he was out. His back, and he's fine now. They said he's completely healthy. I read that. So he had 30 targets. He had 40 targets in 3 weeks since Herbert's been the quarterback. Since he didn't get hurt in those first 3 weeks. So volume is key. And at 7K, I like that. I don't mind, especially if it's in the end zone. And then a good GPP wide receiver is Mike Williams. I know D. Millie has been edging himself this entire podcast. He's been edging himself, waiting for me to whisper in his ear, Mike Williams. This is what he wants. So right now he's reached climax at this point. You can climax, D. Millie. Go ahead. Let's wait. Okay. So yeah, Mike Williams is a good GPP play at 5,900. I wouldn't trust him in cash though. Hunter Henry also is awesome, and I love it. And then I guess the Chargers D too, if you wanted to look at that.
And you being a Chargers fan, you may know. What are your thoughts on Allen? Is it likely he plays?
Yeah. Yes, I've been hearing that. He's totally healthy.
Okay.
His back was just like, we'll find out tomorrow in practice, but from what I've heard, he's fine.
Well, if that's the case, I love Keenan Allen this week. I mean, you mentioned the targets. It's been a beautiful thing. And again, Keenan Allen is 6'2" on DraftKings. Again, if you are paying up at receiver, and there are a lot of guys to pay up for between Adams and all those guys, then you're not going to be able to play Keenan Allen and some of these other guys, Tyreek Hill, who are in this mid-tier range. Now, on the flip side of that, you could say that maybe these guys are more popular because they're forced to pay up at running back. So I guess we'll have to see what it comes down to ownership. And obviously, playing tournaments, I'm very concerned with ownership and obsessed with ownership. So I'm curious to see how that pans out. But as of right now, Keenan Allen looks pretty juicy. But maybe if he looks juicy to me, he'll look juicy to everyone else. Here's the thing about Jacksonville. DVP-wise, as far as fantasy points allowed, it looks like the running game is where you want to attack them. And I understand that. They give it up a lot of fantasy points to running backs, evident by Swift last week. However, if you look at the DVOA metrics through 6 weeks so far, they're 32nd against the pass in DVOA. So I do think we'll see some progression, if you will, where they start getting torched by receivers. So I think Allen, Mike Williams are both definitely viable. And I also like Hunter Henry. Jacksonville has been giving up a lot of fantasy points to tight ends as well. 6th most in the league to the tight end. So I'm definitely interested in Hunter Henry action as well. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to do it for the game by game on our First Look show. Real quick, going to announce this week's contest, giving away $25 over on the Wise Take Twitter. Go follow us at Wise Take, at Wise_Take is the Twitter handle, at Wise_Take. Look for the pinned tweet. It's not up this minute. It'll be up by the time you guys are finished with this. Like it, retweet it, and get your name entered into another raffle, which we will be doing on the Wise stream Friday night. So Friday night we'll be drawing. We have a little spin wheel thing. We show it up on the screen. It's a really good fucking time. So get on it. No reason not to. You're helping the nation, which hopefully if you're watching this show, listening to us, whatever, you're all good with helping the nation. And on top of that, you get an opportunity to try to win $25. Also, don't forget, I will post in the description of this show, regardless of the platform. Look at the description. I'm going to post up the links for a couple of fantasy contests, some Wise Take contests we're going to be doing this week. One on DraftKings, one on FanDuel, for bragging rights on the line. And we're gonna dissect the winning lineup in the contest on next week's First Look show. We will start the show off that way. Give a little shout out to whoever wins. So I'm very excited about it. With that said, appreciate those of you. Please hit the like button. Patio Joe, is there anything in closing before we get up out of here?
G. Millie, I hope you enjoyed yourself all podcast, and I hope you had a good climax.
Love it. I love it. Shout out to the chat, man. This was cool. I wanted to put the chat up on the screen and give everybody an opportunity to be involved in the show. I thought the chat did an excellent job, man. If you're watching the show, you're listening to us, but you're keeping an eye on the chat and looking at the conversation that's going on in there. And there's more of that intense type conversation we plan on having in the Slack chat. So if you're not a member of the Wise Take Nation, go check us out, wisetake.com. Get access to my projections, our cheat sheets, our core plays. Patio Joe writes the cash game article, Paulie D writing the GPP article, and of course, if you're a monthly member or higher, we have the Slack chat. But at the very least, even if you're not doing all that dirty, at least you could do is subscribe to the YouTube channel and Twitch with notifications bell, and make sure you don't miss out any of the free content we do. We do a lot of free content. For myself, for Patio Joe, the entire Wise Take Nation, as always, good luck.
Peace.
Yeah.